So in this section, we're going to be exploring using smaller open source reasoning LLMs to power our agent. And to do this, we're going to be using a tool called Ollama. So Ollama is a very popular tool for running LLMs locally. So people might prefer to run LLMs locally for a number of reasons. It might be for cost reasons, it might be for privacy reasons, or it might be because they just prefer to use open source models compared to closed source models like the one we were using in the last section. So because Ollama models are specifically designed to be run locally, they tend to be very lightweight models compared to these absolutely enormous closed source models or proprietary models that we were using in the previous section. So this is through a combination of two things. Firstly, the models that are available on Ollama tend to just be smaller variants. So something like 3 billion or 8 billion parameters compared to, the hundreds of billions of parameters that closed source models tend to have. And the other way in which Ollama models are made smaller is through a process called quantization. So this is basically where the model weights, that is, the numbers that the model has learned during training, are reduced in precision. And basically what this does is it reduces the memory use and also speeds up the model, but it tends to not really impact model performance that much. So apart from having a really large number of lightweight, powerful models available, Ollama is also very popular because it comes with a very clean command line interface. And this allows you, as we're going to see soon, to very easily access and manage the models. But before we can start using Ollama, we need to install Ollama. And the easiest way to do this is by going to the official Ollama website and installing the version specific for your operating system. So you can do that by going to ollama.com/download and selecting the correct version for your computer. So now that we have Ollama installed, we can check out the models. And in order to do this, we head over to the models section of the website. So looking through this section, we can see that there are very powerful and well-known models available through Ollama. Things like GPT-OSS, Qwen 3VL, and DeepSeek R1. So you're definitely spoiled for choice in terms of the types of models that you can use through Ollama. And then because we need a reasoning model, we're going to filter these models by the thinking filter, which is the same as reasoning models. So we have quite a few choices of models here, but based on earlier experiments that I did when setting up this project, I've settled on Qwen 3 being the best choice for this React agent. And based on the specs of my computer, the 8 billion parameter model, this one here, Qwen 3 8B, is around the biggest that my machine can comfortably run and still produce close to real-time results. But you might have a more powerful machine than me. You might be able to use a bigger variant. You might need to move down to a smaller variant. It's just about experimenting with what your machine can handle. So let's now start getting hands-on with Ollama. So we're going to go back to PyCharm and we're going to open a new terminal window. And the first thing I want to show you is all of the models that I already have installed. So we just type in the command Ollama list, and that's going to display all of those models for us. And this offers us a very convenient way of seeing which models we've already got installed. And in the case of models that we might have installed and we're not using, maybe giving us a hint that we might want to delete them, because you can see that some of these models are pretty big. But the other thing you can see from this list is that I haven't yet installed Qwen 3. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And this generalizes to any model that you want to pull. So in order to download, or in the parlance of Ollama, to pull a specific model, you go to that model's page, and then importantly, you click on the specific variant that you want to download. In our case, we want to download the 8 billion parameter model. So towards the top of this page, you can see a command, Ollama run Qwen 3 8B. So this is actually the command for running models that you've already downloaded or pulled onto your machine. So it's not the exact command that we need, but importantly, this gives us the exact correct name of the model that we need in order to pull this model. So what we're going to do is copy this command and we're going to modify it slightly in order to be able to pull this model. And then if we copy and paste that command into the terminal and change run into pull, I told you it was a slight modification, this is going to allow us to download that Qwen 3 model. So if we just press enter and execute that command, it's going to start downloading that model for us. And as you saw, this is a 5 GB model, so it's going to take a little while. So I'm just going to fast forward through and get us to the end of that download. And then if you want to get a different model, it's really just a matter of repeating the same steps. So from the Ollama website, you get the exact name of the model, you pull it using Ollama pull, and voila, it will just be available on your machine, just like Qwen 3. Now, before we change our agent over to using Qwen 3, we can actually get a sense of how it's actually going to perform compared to our previous model, the GPT-4o model. And to do this, we can use another tool window in PyCharm called the AI Playground. So let's open up the AI Playground and click on this New Playground button. And we can see that the AI Playground allows us to input 2 different pieces of information. It first allows us to import a system prompt, i.e. a prompt of instructions that we're using to test out an LLM. And it also allows us to add multiple models that are going to run that system prompt. So clicking on this Add Model drop-down menu, we can see we have a huge number of different models that are available to us. And something that's really nice with the way that you access models through the AI Playground is that for proprietary models, you've got a choice of either accessing them using your own API key or through your AI Assistant subscription, your JetBrains AI account. So if you want to quickly try out a proprietary model that you don't yet have an API key for, something like, say, the Anthropic models, you can quickly try them out using the tokens that you've purchased through your JetBrains AI plan. So I'm going to show you how to use this method in order to test out GPT-4o. And then, of course, the other model that we want to compare it with is our Ollama model, Qwen 3 8 billion. So you can also see that without us doing anything, the AI Playground has automatically detected all of those Ollama models that I've downloaded. So it's just as simple as selecting it from a list. So as for the system prompt we're going to provide to these LLMs, unsurprisingly, we're going to use the same system prompt that we're already using in the assistant function of our agent. But because this prompt tells the LLM that it's going to get a command, we need to then provide a user command at the end of that. So it starts exactly as it appears in our agent system prompt. You are a helpful language learning assistant. You have access to the following tools. And then we have that description of our tool, the get and random words tool. Then we have our more detailed instructions that the job of the agent is to check the source language and how many words that the user wants. And then we have those few shot examples of how the agent output should correctly work. And then we add that user command to the end of the system prompt. Please give me 5 random words in English. And then we just finish off this prompt by tying everything together and asking the LLM, how would you solve this problem with the available tools? So just scrolling around and looking at the initial outputs, we can see that both of the models are actually creating their outputs pretty quickly. And as I said, this was one of the reasons that I picked the 8 billion parameter Qwen model, because it can run this fast on my machine. I tried a few larger models and they were definitely a lot more sluggish. But having a closer look at the results from Qwen 3 first, you can see this is a very verbose model. You're going to see this as we're looking through the results. But basically, what Qwen does in its outputs is it shows you very explicitly the reasoning process that it's going through. So essentially, it's saying what the user's input is 5 random words in English. The available tool it has is get n random words. These are the parameters that it takes. So basically what it needs to do is to extract the number of words and the language from the user prompt. And so it's done that correctly. And then it just sort of continues spelling out how it would do it. But this is essentially very much correct. And so it's done a good job. And we can see that it can handle, so far at least, the task that we're getting the agent to do. So the output from GPT-4o is a lot more succinct. We've already seen that when we ran the agent the first time. But basically, it's following the exact same steps and extracting the same information. So it's determined that the first step is to parse the input to extract the source language and number of words. It's correctly identified that source language and number of words. And it's also correctly identified that it needs to use the get n random words function. So this is exactly the same as what Qwen 3 decided. And it really shows us that for at least the tasks we're getting the agent to do so far, there's pretty much an equivalent performance between the two models. So we can feel happy moving forward and changing the agent over to Qwen 3. So it's been pretty straightforward so far to get the models, and changing our agent over so that it uses an Ollama model rather than an OpenAI model is similarly straightforward. So the first thing we need to do is to change the method that we're going to be using to use our model. So previously we were using the chat OpenAI method from the LangChain OpenAI package. We're going to change that to the ChatOllama method from the LangChain Ollama package. And then we go down to where our LLM is defined inside our assistant function. And we keep the same variable name of LLM, but we change it to a call to ChatOllama, and we define the model as Qwen 3 8 billion, again with that exact same format that we got from the Ollama website. So that's it. We're now ready to run the agent again and see how the Qwen model goes in action. So to do this, we go down to, again, the execution point at our main method and run that main script. So we can see that it's taking a little bit of time to think, but now it's given us the first step that it's taken when trying to carry out this command. So our input, of course, is that user input, please get 10 random words in German. And on this call of the assistant, Qwen 3 has reasoned through what it needs to do. So it's basically checked the tools available, found the get n random words function, realized that the parameters needed are language and n. It's extracted those successfully from the text, and then it's done a tool call using those arguments. And then, as with GPT-4o, it's correctly done that, and the output of that tool call is that list of 10 random words in German. And then again, just like when we ran the agent with GPT-4o, it's realized at this point that it's actually completed the task when it's observed the results, and therefore it's terminated the agent and given us that formatted list of German words. And with that, we're done.